If you're watching this, you are one of one. Just like your fingerprint. There will never, ever be anybody else that has your DNA makeup. And that is the strongest thing. Don't listen to the noise that is around you. Recognize that you are one of one and that God put you on this earth for a reason in this season. In a moment where AI is disrupting things and there's all of this uncertainty where we don't know where we're going as humans, really sit down and anchor yourself and say, why did you put me with my charisma, with my personality, with my looks in this industry? Because that was my question. Was God, why was I raised in this church and around all this exposure? I'm Mexican, German, born in Canada, lived in the United States, grew up with an Arab American community. Why am I this mixed melting pot that doesn't have an identity? And it was because I had an identity in Him. And He called me for this movement and such a time as this.
Hello, everyone. I am back with another episode of Rebuild and Rise. And today I am with a very dear friend of mine, Rogelio Goertzen. And he has quite the background and expertise. And it is such a privilege when I get to bring my real life conversations to the camera, because when I meet someone who is faith driven, who is just a breath of fresh air, I want them to share their story, because that's what it's all about, is inspiring others through what we live and what we see every single day. So he's been through a lot, he's seen a lot, he's building a lot, and I'm going to let him tell his entire story. But he is the CEO of Tu Nuevo Home, and he is also my dear friend. So I would like to introduce Rogelio Goertzen II. So welcome to the show. It is so great to see you, and I love your background.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited because every time that you and I just talk, whether it's a text message or an email, you could just feel the energy, and I know that this is going to be an amazing podcast.
I'm so excited. I know. And this is, to be transparent with our guests, this is not our first time recording. We've had a few experiences. So this one's going to be really, really good, really juicy. So I think the audience is going to appreciate this one. So I actually had this question for not only the audience, but for myself personally, because I know a lot about you. I know your background. I know what you're building. But I want to know who you were as a little kid. What did you watch your family go through? And I want to hear about money, work, homeownership that you didn't understand until a little bit later.
Oh, that's such a great question. So, backstory, I was actually born in Windsor, Ontario, and my family started the very first Hispanic church. And there was not that many Hispanics in Windsor. And it started with 5 people in my uncle's living room and just quickly grew to a movement. So church and faith was a very big part of my upbringing. And especially seeing just all the different cultures. Like we were primarily speaking Spanish, but we were the only Mexican family there. We had people from El Salvador, from Chile, from Argentina, from all walks of life. And so it was very beautiful to be a part of that. And we had every single flag from all the nations in our sanctuary. And so, culture and bilingual services was something that I was always a part of. And I became the worship leader at the age of 12 years old. I taught myself how to play the piano. And that has been kind of a very big pillar in how I lead people. Worship leaders, they have the responsibility to arguably lead the hardest, because you're changing someone's heart, and preparing them to enter into worship and to have a better experience with God. So that, was technically my first leadership job. But to answer your question about home ownership, my dad, he's one of the main reasons why I started this organization, because he migrated from Mexico to Windsor at the age of 14. And he bought his first home. And that first home, he ripped off the roof and built a second story. And my mom shares the stories. She was pregnant with me and she was staring up and there was like a hole in the entire roof and she was like looking at the stars. And normally you're like, oh, sweet, it's a starlit, vacation. But that's not what she felt in that moment, being pregnant with me. So, that was the first thing that he did. And then we migrated from Canada to the United States and he built our home brick by brick. The only thing that he paid for someone to do was to dig out the basement. And I have pictures of even my grandma laying brick and just being a part of that home ownership journey. And my dad is so great. He's Mexican and German, 50-50. And he brought in the engineering side of his, family into that. And so he double insulated everything. He has French drains in the basement and was just so thought out in how he built the home, and they won't move. I've tried to upgrade their home. They will absolutely not move. Not only because, it's a really great home and there aren't, houses that are selling. They're like, dude, I have to literally spend $300,000 to upgrade everything within an old house when our house is newer. It doesn't make sense. So that's how I grew up.
Wow. That is so cool. Was there ever a moment, because I know when I was a little kid, I had a moment where I was so thankful for what I had and for what was around me, but I knew I was meant for something bigger. I felt pulled. Did you ever have that same pull, like you're called to something bigger or different than what you saw around you?
Absolutely. I always thought that, I was royalty in another life because I loved the castles and the palaces. Absolutely. Totally. I'm a little high maintenance, I'm bougie on a budget.
I can see that. I can totally see that. I love that. So you're very manicured, which I love.
Yes. Yep. But, funny enough, I didn't realize that my family, was at middle class. We had a brand new car. My family was very, very great with money. And I really do believe that God blessed us in a way that I can't even articulate. It's like he stretched their dollar, if you will. And I never realized, now looking back at it in my adult life, I'm like, whoa, you did all of that only getting paid. My dad was a factory worker. And you did all of that with only a $50,000 to $60,000 salary, with overtime. That's insane that you were able to provide for 4 kids, that you were able to build a new house, that you had the energy to still volunteer at your church. We were actively in our church, almost every single day. And so seeing all of that, I'm like, wow, God's hand was definitely on my parents' life and on my life.
That's so inspiring. I have a very similar experience with my family as well. I am amazed to see what my parents were able to do with so little. And I love that you had that experience as well, and that it seemed to form in your mind as something where, you have such a deep appreciation. And I don't think you really understand or appreciate it until you're much, much older. But that's so cool. And I give kudos to parents who make it work, where they're just like, there is no other option. I'm going to make this work for my family. I think that's amazing.
Absolutely. And funny enough, my sisters don't even understand it.
Really?
I have to literally and I'm the youngest. And so it's interesting because even my mom, I love her so much, but she sometimes will, be like, we'll nag my dad, if you will. And I have to always remind her and be like, hey, he did the best that he could with what God gave him. And I respect and love him so much that, we have to give respect where respect is due. And I can't even imagine migrating to 2 countries and building houses in both of those countries, understanding how credit works in Canada, let alone the United States. Those are some of the things that I give him kudos for. And that's the main reason why I launched Home.
That is so cool. Well, so since you brought it up, we're going to jump into Home, because I do want to talk a little bit about your background and how you got there, but walk me through Home. So talk me through the initiation. When did this idea hit you that I need to start Home, and why?
Honestly, I feel like, just being very transparent, because I feel like your viewers deserve that, I feel like I ran from it.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, tell me everything. This is great. Okay. I did not expect this one. Okay.
Well, I I don't want to say I ran from it completely, but I didn't want to be the person. It's funny, even my marketing team, they're like, who is the face? And I'm like, not me, it's everybody else. Like, no, I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't want to be this person. I love being behind the scenes and just making things happen.
Yeah, here we are.
Yes. Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Being very, very transparent. So I recognized a need. We're going to get into it, but I worked at United Wholesale Mortgage, and I was the only Spanish speaker in that entire company. And so that's where I saw firsthand the need. So I was translating from servicing to underwriting to just borrowers that would call in and not understand the process or different questions. And so that's where I started to identify the need. But still, it was like, okay, my focus was on the top 100 and helping Matt Ishby, our CEO. So there was like a pull of like, I'm building all of these things that are mega big, but yet there is this community that needs me down here. And so there was this pull of like, where do I focus my time, my energy, and my intention on? And so I feel like gradually, one of the people that inspired me most was our key club president. And she said, you first want to start by impacting your home. And then after you impact your home, you focus on your city. Then after your city, you focus on your state. Then after your state, you focus on your nationwide, because you want to make sure that you're able to not wear yourself out. And so I did a very similar dynamic. I focused on myself. I got myself financially stable. And then I focused on my family and I rose them up. And then I focused on my community. And it just started expanding and expanding. And I feel like home was that initiative where it was like God was pulling me to lift my community up in a greater perspective. And so after I built everything that I built at UWM, which we'll get into shortly, that's when I said, okay, let me go back to my community and teach them those fundamentals and help raise everybody up as well.
Wow. That's really neat. I love that. You gave so many little nuggets of gold in there. And who was the person who said start with, you said your home and then you moved it from I don't know. You did it perfectly. I'm going to make sure that we highlight that because that was amazing. That was gold. That was really impactful. So, well, let's talk about UWM. So, because I've read so much, I've seen so many of your posts and I loved what I have read about you. And it seems that from the very beginning, you've always had a servant's heart, because it seems like everything I read on your posts, I think there was one where it said like you jumped up from your desk and you ran over to somebody else's desk and you were just all about providing value and helping and how can I help and how can I just make this company be what it is today. I mean, talk about where you started and talk about the progression for, I guess, the time that you were at UWM, 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Just walk me through what that looked like.
Absolutely. So I started back in 2014 when we were very, very small. There were only a couple hundred employees.
Only.
And yeah. Yep. And we did not have the technology, the brand. We really didn't know where we were going outside of the fact that we wanted to be number one and our goal was 20 billion. So I started when we were only doing 10 billion, which is pretty decent for a wholesale lender. And what made them very unique is they were the only lender that was 100% wholesale committed to broker partners. And 14 months into my career, I got tapped on the shoulder and they said, we've been watching you for the last 2 weeks. And I was like, oh no, like that's it. My career is done. And they said, we want to give you a promotion. Like we are thinking about this new dynamic role where you can help us build the top accounts, and we're going to give you everything that you need to build it. And, you're going to make a lot of money. Well, that did not happen. I did not get everything that I needed to build it, and I did not make a lot of money. But I understood the direction that the company was going in. And so I was very due diligent in, what it was that we needed to do at that specific time. So we did not have the technology. We did not have the process built out. I joined at a very unique time that all the C-level leaders were new as well. So Melinda Wilner, the chief operating officer, she's arguably probably one of the smartest brains in the mortgage industry. I was fortunate enough to be there when she started her career with UWM. And same thing with Sarah DeSantis, the chief marketing officer. Like marketing in mortgage is an afterthought. it's not really something that people want to specialize in. And so those two powerhouses were, along with Matt Ishbia, were very instrumental in, I want to say, creating me. My 20s, I grew up in UWM, and I was fortunate enough to be mentored by a billionaire, which a lot of people cannot say. So to answer your question, I was very focused on leading with that servant's heart of how do we need to get to be number one? And I would basically be, I probably shouldn't say this, but I would joke around that I was a Mexican behind the scenes doing everything that needed to be done to make sure that it was a seamless process for our clients and ultimately the consumer. And that's what I really focused on.
Wow. That's really neat. And we have had so many conversations about what you've learned from Matt Ishbia, but if you could just choose one thing, like one lesson that he gave you that you implement, whether it's daily, monthly, weekly, something that you never stop thinking about, what would it be?
That's it's really tough to just articulate in one thing because I've learned so many amazing things from business. I get emotional even thinking about it because the way that he leads unlike anybody else in the industry. I don't know how he does it. Like, he's a superhuman. You never see him have a bad day or an off day, and he always gives so much time, energy into everybody that it's truly impressive. But one of the, well, I'm going to give you two. The business one, someone asked him, what was the biggest mistake that you made? And he answered, I don't know, because I changed that quickly. And so, again, we're going to make mistakes in life, but the most important lesson is to adapt and change. You can make 10 different mistakes, but don't sit there and dwell on the mistake that you made. Pivot, change, adapt, grow. And that, business-wise, that was the biggest lesson that I learned is don't focus on all of the mistakes that you made and all the wrong. Focus on the right and quickly adapt and change all of those things to focus on where you want to go. And then the second one was personally, he, really wanted to grade. He's very big on metrics. And so he wanted to grade himself on being a good dad, but you can't really equate that to something. So he basically said, if I go on an individual date with each one of my kids, that's how I'm grading myself as a good dad because I'm giving them undivided attention for that entire time period. So I said, okay, I don't have kids, but I want to be a better son. How can I do that with my parents? And so I started to do the same techniques with my family, and that got my family closer. And so, personally, he's had such an amazing impact on me as well as business.
I literally it's like a mic drop at the end of both of those. That first one, I mean, personally for me, I actually really needed to hear that today, that first one that you just dropped. So I'm just going to be chewing on that nugget for the rest of the day. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I actually really needed that today. It's really good. So, I mean, I would 100% consider it betting on yourself. So you spent about 10 years with Matt, and so obviously you transitioned out. And so I want to talk about where we are now because, right, we've got home and then you transitioned out from UWM. Talk to me about your next chapter. What are you building right now? What are you working on? And I know we'll talk about home exclusively in just a second, but what else are you working on outside of just home? Because I know there's been some recent transitions.
Man, well, so first off, I've had roughly about 2 years away from UWM, and that was amazing. That was very, very impactful. I got to really learn how other lenders work and the infrastructures and the red tape, if you will, that some of them face, whether it's technology, attorneys, or all those other things. But I'm very proud to say that I've helped, lenders go into the ITIN space, as well as expand into Spanish loan documents, which are two initiatives that the community was begging me for. And those are two things that UWM hasn't done yet. And so I felt like in that season, God was really telling me, leave your home and go over here and influence other lenders and grow these things. And so that's really what I was focused on. And I didn't understand it at that time period. But then now seeing some lenders go into the space, like now we have over 10 lenders that are in the ITIN space. We have 2 lenders that adopted, Spanish loan documents, really language access in 6 different languages. And we're in conversations with probably about 5 or 6 other ones. So I'm extremely blessed at that season because it was a moment that God took me a different route, to still move the mission and accomplish what he wanted in my life. And now I am transitioning to something newer, which I have not shared publicly, but because you are my very, very close friend, we're going to drop it here live. So yes. Yep.
This is exciting.
So and it's funny, this is exclusive. So you have the exclusive right to this. We haven't even officially drafted up the press release, which is going to follow and all that stuff. But I am coming on board eMortgage Capital to really help with their growth and their infrastructure.
Amazing.
And, I was torn because I have relationships with the top 100 mortgage brokers that it was really like, God, like, what am I meant to do? Like, what do I do? Like, I don't know. How can I build something and compete with other people? I'm not very big on competition per se. And, what I kind of felt like God was telling me in that season was, there is such a need for leadership and guidance and education and training in the mortgage space that you're running away from what I called you to do. And so I love EMC. I've known these guys forever, and they're licensed in 48 states. They have 1,000 originators. They're already big. They really don't need, little Rogelito. But ultimately, if only 1% of originators are Hispanic, where is their home going to be? So the reason why I decided to partner with EMC is because they have the best technology. There's only about 4 mortgage brokers that can even afford Salesforce. They have the Salesforce, they have the marketing, they have the technology, they have the leads, they have the state licensing, that realistically it can plug and play, and I can help build multicultural lending in a way that's more impactful by partnering up with EMC. So I'm really excited for what God's going to do next.
That's so funny. I love how you talk about all of these things that you're pulled to do, but you kind of like are running away from them as well. I love that. It's very consistent. And it reminds me so much of all the biblical characters. And it's like, really, God, are you sure about that? And he's like, yeah, I'm sure. Just go. Like it's amazing. So I think it's going to be really amazing, and I cannot wait to see what you accomplish in this next chapter. I think that this is like going to be just a sliver, and I'm going to be the bystander cheering you on every step of the way. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
So I do want to ask a little bit more about home, because this is so important what you're building, and this is something to me that's truly captivating and so very interesting. So first of all, what does HOME stand for?
So HOME stands for the Hispanic Organization of Mortgage Experts.
Perfect. So obviously I know this community is very important to you. Walk me through when you saw, what was the moment in time, besides obviously your upbringing, but what was the moment in time when you're working in the mortgage industry, you're fully engulfed in what you were doing? When is a moment in time when you were like, this is broken, we need to fix this? When did that happen? And what does HOME do to essentially try to close that I guess void or gap that just doesn't exist in the mortgage industry today?
Yeah, so it was interesting because our president, Danny Velasquez, today is actually his birthday. So happy birthday, Danny.
Happy birthday.
He actually was the one that I want to say activated me. HOME really activates loan officers, because realistically, you can go lend, you can go serve. HOME doesn't, do anything, that monumental other than provide a home for all these originators to help grow and scale. But he was the one that, he came into UWM, and, since I was the only Spanish speaker, they'd be like, Ro, another Mexican, go have lunch with them. And I would, and he looked at me straight in the face and he said, Rogelio, the Hispanic community is the largest home buying population, and they're going to continue to grow. What are we doing? What are lenders doing? What are banks doing? What is being done? And I looked at him and I said, you want the truth? Nothing. They don't know what to do. They have no strategy. They're not even focused on these things. Most, mortgage lenders and big banks are focused on profitability for quarters. They're not focused on future thinking. And then also this industry is very archaic. So to innovate and to change, it's a lot. Like I've been in so many closed rooms where they're fighting as to whether or not we can't translate something or do something. And it's just, it was being told no so many different times that really created that curiosity and said, well, why not? Like there's AI, there's all of this technology. Why can't we do something different and something better? So to answer your question, that was a pivotal moment when he said, what are lenders and banks doing? And I couldn't give him an answer that I felt good with, that I said, okay, there's something that needs to be done here. And being very honest, I didn't want to be the one to do it. So I gave him a long list of things. And I said, okay, if you want to do it, go do it. But here's what you need to do. Start meeting with these people, start doing this. And this was back in 2018 or 2019. And funny enough, I think 1 or 2 years later, he came back with that original email and he said, Rogelio, I did everything that you told me to do. What's next? And honestly, I didn't think he was going to do it. So I was like, shoot, what is next? And that's how we kind of created Home. And so it was super powerful.
Wow. I did not know that. That is really cool. So when you told me privately, because I know that you invested a very large personal amount of money into Home because of your belief in it, and ultimately decided we don't want outside investors. What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so a lot of people like to market to the Hispanic community or try to, use Spanish words, crazy, colorful flyers to try to get the attention of, but their heart and their motive is really profit. It's how do we gain market share? How do we make the most money? And they're really not, they're not serving the consumer first. And so my thought process behind that was, if I go on ahead and, put forth the money, then I can ensure that the mission and the heart doesn't change. So that was my thought process behind it, because I really felt like people were pulling in different directions and trying to use, even taking pictures with me. Like it gets crazy. People just want to be in the photo so that they're like, see, we support Hispanics. And it's like, do you really support and help Hispanics like adopt language access or partner with us on a different level? So that was the main reason why I didn't allow other investors in.
So smart. I mean, I love that you're about protecting the purity and the integrity of the mission. And I love that you're so discerning about who you let into your circle. I know we've talked about that a number of times. And I love that about you, because I think that that's the only place that missions can truly grow. So I admire that quality in you a lot, because I think there's a lot of people that would sell out just to make a quick buck. And that's not you. So I love that about you.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So I want to zoom out, because what I want to do is tell me where this movement is going to go in 5 years. I want to talk big picture. Where do you see this going in 5 years?
That is, well, first of all, only 1% of originators are Hispanic. And so multicultural lending is a very big focus of mine. And I see us growing way bigger than just Hispanics. It's interesting because every time I speak about language access, which we're partnered up with the only technology company that provides this for lending institutions, retail and wholesale combined. And when I go and I speak about language access, there are so many different people from different communities that will raise their hand and they say, what about us? Can you fight for us? Can you get documents in our language? And I want to unpack that for a second, because it's so humbling, for me. I'm only 33 years old, and I'm like, God, like the weight of the nations, I feel like, are on my shoulders. I have a duty and a responsibility for all of these different communities. And so when they raise their hand, I'm like, yes, you're on the list. Yes, you're on the list. And so I'm very fortunate enough to have the voice with this tech company to help with the prioritization of what that language access looks like. So we're already working on Portuguese. Arabic is another one that I get asked for. Punjabi is another language that I get asked for. And so as we get more adoption, we can invest more money into those areas to expand access to every single language in every single nation. And that's what I'm really focused on. Now, the byproduct, it's funny because all of these things are a byproduct of me leading. I lead first and I adapt to what the needs are for the community, whether that's the mortgage industry as a whole or whether that's a certain, cultural subgroup that I want to really focus on. So to answer your question, the next 5 years, I see us expanding a lot of language access and getting more lenders to adopt that technology. And really, even all of the housing issues come to our desk in Washington. So we're also lobbying from that perspective as well. So, whether or not you adopt the technology today, we are working on the infrastructure to make this into a law so that financial institutions have to provide language access as a whole so that communities are not targeted in a negative way and you're able to understand what you're actually signing.
Wow. I just honestly, I just cannot get past it. And I know I've told you before, but I just cannot get past it. I just naturally assumed that there were documents in every language. I just assumed. And it still to this day bewilders me. And I love that you're the one who's setting it in motion. I'm like, to say that this industry is archaic is an understatement. To not have documents to sign in your own language, to me, that's a very loud signal, to say the least. Like, something's wrong here, something's broken, and something has to give. So I love that you jumped in reluctantly and you're doing what you're doing because this is such a huge need. And you and I have spoken before, but I'm seeing cases now where, banks even do things like we've talked about reverse redlining, where, they're targeting people who are less savvy in the credit space. And it's been known that they're targeting Hispanics and African American community. And there's a big case that's going down right now. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but there's a big case that's going down right now where it's proven.
I think Texas,
that,
right? I think I've heard about it.
Well, there's that one too.
Oh boy.
there's a more recent one that is going down right now. And so it's very disheartening to see what it did and how they set these poor people up. Is they had poor credit scores. They were the target because they're like, they're not going to know what they're signing anyway. Hispanic and African Americans. And so they were designed to fail. So these interest rates were so high to begin with. And then what they did is they're like, okay, the moment that you miss a payment, your interest rate on your home will jump to 18%. Who in the heck can afford that? So it caused this spiral where all these people foreclosed on their homes, and it got brought to light, and like the punishment is not going to be small. So, I think having even access to documents in your own language is going to also help prevent things like this as well, because let's face it, a lot of people don't read documents, but you should at least have the choice. And so I love the mission that you are building. I really do. So I want to ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it, but I want to ask you, is there a goal that you haven't said out loud publicly yet? The one that you're just chasing quietly, just between you and God? So I said, you don't have to answer.
You always stump me. You're the only person that, really digs in and gets something out of me. Yeah. It's interesting because when I first started this organization, I was focused on doing everything that everyone does: chase the impressions, chase the conferences, chase the stage. And I felt a very still, quiet voice tell me, go build my people. And that was something that I ran from because I'm like, well, I'm young, yes, I've been in the industry for 14 years, and yes, I helped build the nation's largest lender, but who am I? And that's one of the things that I battled with, especially initially when I started. I felt like I needed to be validated, like I needed someone to say, this is who you are, go out and do it. And I felt like God was really telling me, I created you in my image and I made you for this purpose. I've prepared you through everything that you've gone through the Christian and the secular world. Now you're called to bridge it and really build up people. And so to answer your question, my goal is to build leaders within this industry. It's to make sure that I am investing in the future of what this looks like. Let's be honest. it's very transactional, and people are not focused on building up leaders because they're worried about, well, they're going to be my competitor or they're going to steal market share. And I'm really focused on the latter. I want you to grow. Even with what I'm building with EMC, I was like, they were like, okay, go build this, but at the same time, like, people are going to want to leave, and make more money. And I said, absolutely, that's my goal. My goal is that you outgrow me. I don't want to keep people caged up here to just work underneath me or work for what I'm building. My goal is to build leaders within this industry. So go out, go build it, go build your team. So what my goal and my focus is, a very long-winded way of saying it, is to build the future of lending. The average age of loan officers is 55, and in 10 years, most of them will be extinct. So I am focused on creating that next wave that really cares about the consumer and that wants to go lead within this community, because that's the future of this industry.
Wow. Wow. Powerful. Really powerful. All I can say is I'm so excited to know you, and I cannot wait to see what you do. And I think that this is so important because I feel like this is something that's missing. I feel like you're so right. I don't see a lot of education. I don't see a lot of people taking this kind of approach to the mortgage industry. And you hit it right on the head when you said it's so transactional. So, and like attracts like. And John Maxwell always says, he's like, you replicate who you are. So, Ro, I mean, you're going to ultimately replicate who you are. So you're going to build some amazing people. And I think that you have a real shot at making this industry better than what it is, because it certainly needs a little bit of a facelift. So I think you're the one to do it.
Thank you. And I mean, thank you, because, you're a big part of that as well. Credit is such a big thing in the industry, and we've talked about how it's kind of frowned upon. And the main reason why you and I hit it off so much is because that heart was more important than the profit. And there's so many credit companies that tried to get my attention, and there was no one that I wanted to partner with besides you. And so I'm very excited because you are, very big on educating and building up people and leaving them better than when you left them, whether they use you or not, whether that's a consumer, whether that's a loan officer. And so I feel like you are an answered prayer to home and to what we're building. And I'm excited because I know that you're going to be a part of this history as well.
Well, I can't say thank you enough, but at the end of the day, I mean, we know that our relationship was divinely orchestrated. There's no accident. It's amazing. Like, how weird is it that of all the places, so like we initially meet at this conference, right? So everybody listening, so we meet at TAG and we exchange some words and we talk for a little bit, but it wasn't until we got to the airport where we end up sitting in the Delta Lounge having this insane heart-to-heart for like an hour and a half where the alarms are going off, and we just connect and we just both realize, like, who is this person? Like, it's like I already knew I wanted to know who you were, but then like God was just like, no, you need a little more time together. I mean, it was just like so amazingly orchestrated. Like, I can't get past it. Like, our God is so cool and he's so
Absolutely.
big. It's amazing.
I almost missed my flight because the conversation was so good. I was in another terminal.
So glad you didn't.
Yeah,
I would have felt so bad.
No, I made it just in the nick of time, but our conversation was just so great. It felt like a podcast.
Oh my gosh.
I wanted to stay there. So yeah, it was great.
My gosh. So awesome. So awesome. So one thing I do want to know is, so obviously you are so faith forward and you have an amazing team that is all about faith, and you welcomed me into your team meeting, and every single person on there is just, they're all about faith and God and Jesus. And so my question is how do you intend to protect the faith first culture that your team has right now?
Yeah. So first off, it wasn't always that way. Actually, my very first marketing person advised me not to pray and not to be so faith forward. And that was kind of like a battle. It was a tug of war within me, especially because this was a time that the Hispanic community specifically was being targeted. And, there was so much going on politically that I felt torn, and I didn't know what else to do, besides pray for those people, for those families, for that community. So my very first speaking engagement, I went up there and she told me not to pray. And I did it anyways. And I said, guys, I'm going to pray. And I'm doing this for me because this is my first time public speaking and I'm more nervous about it. So I'm going to get the nerves out by praying. And so I did. And, I prayed for the community. I prayed for what we're building. And, when I opened my eyes, there were people that were actually in tears in that classroom and in that setting. And it was at UWM, funny enough, my employer that for the last 10 years. And here I am coming back in a different way. And I was praying. So that was very, very special for me. But to answer your question, I'm very big on doing a heart check for people. I'm not big on resumes. I'm not big on, your credentials, what you've done. Funny enough, people are like, Ro, nothing impresses you. And, it's true because I've seen everything. I've seen all the top mortgage companies that I'm not interested in the impressions and all those things that get. It's more of what is your heart? What does your heart say about you and what you're doing? Especially when we're talking about multicultural communities that get targeted, that get taken advantage of, that people know that English is not their first language and they maliciously will target them. I want to make sure that this community is protected. And so faith is something that grounds me and it makes sure that I am focused on what it is that God wants to do in this earth, in this community. And so I'm constantly always praying. And even when it comes to people that I onboard into the team, it's not necessarily that you have to be Christian or faith-based, but the people that are not, or even that say that they're Christian, but their heart doesn't have the right intention and they're really in it for the clout or for the pictures or for the fame, they kind of weed themselves out in a way. So I'm very much like I hire quick, but I fire slow because I want to analyze the heart and really see, is this someone that God wants to use? Because God can use anybody and anything. And there's even, some people that are on my team that aren't that faith focused or aren't Christian, but they have that heart that wants to serve and they feel that pull in their heart as well. So, and their faith has grown through being around us. And so it's very powerful to see that although Home is an organization for mortgage experts, that God very much is the center of what it is that we're building.
I love this so much. I love it. So let's go 20 years from now. When people talk about you and what you've built, what do you want them to say?
I'm not really building this for people to say something about me, but what I do want is, funny enough, I was on a podcast with Joe Shelby, the CEO of EMC, and he asked me, his very last question to me was, if you were to die today, what do you think God would tell you? And I choked up and I said, I think he would tell me, well done, my good and faithful servant. I saw how much obstacles were in your way, how much people came against you, how much the enemy tried to derail and attack the mission, the call, and the assignment that was on your life. But you never once left that mark and you were focused on who I called you to be. And so to answer your question, I'm not so much focused on what people will say about me because there's going to be some people that love me and there's going to be some people that hate me, just like Jesus. But ultimately, I'm more focused on what God says he did with my life. And was I a good, faithful servant that said yes, even though I had fear and didn't know who I was or what he called me to do, but I was constantly focused on being a vessel for him to use.
Well, thank you for making me cry a little. That's actually one of my, that for me personally is by far like, it's my biggest, deepest, strongest desire. That's all that I want in this life. So that was amazing. I want to ask you really quickly. Sorry, that was good, Ro.
You're good. You're
That
good.
was good. Oh, goodness gracious. That was incredible. That was legendary. So I would love for you to just, because you're so good at this, I would love to hear one piece of just Rogelio advice, because you got a lot of good nuggets. So what can you give all of us as just one major takeaway as we're about to come to a wrap? What's one major takeaway that we can all take home with us today?
So my biggest message in this season is, if you're watching this, you are one of one. There will never, ever be, just like your fingerprint, there will never, ever be anybody else that has your DNA makeup, that was born with your parents, that had your upbringing, that had your level of education, that had the exposure that you did. And that is the strongest thing. So my message to everybody is, don't listen to the noise that is around you. Recognize that you are one of one, and that God put you on this earth for a reason and this season. And in a moment where AI is disrupting things and there's all of this uncertainty where we don't know where we're going as humans, really sit down and anchor yourself and say, God, why did you put me with my charisma, with my personality, with my looks in this industry? Because that was my question. Was, God, why was I raised in this church and around all this exposure? I'm Mexican, German, born in Canada, lived in the United States, grew up with an Arab American community. Like, why am I this mixed melting pot that doesn't have an identity? And it was because I had an identity in him. And he called me for this movement and such a time as this. And so my message to everybody is, you are one of one. Embrace it. Be everything that God called you to be, because there is nobody else that will be you on this earth.
I love it. So if everyone would like to get involved, how can they get involved? Whether it's join the organization, contact you directly if you want them to contact you directly. Obviously, Instagram and everything will be listed in the show notes. But what's the best way for people to reach you and get involved?
Absolutely. So I'm very active on Instagram. I connect with all of my people personally. I don't even let my social media team handle any of that because it's so personal to me. But you can find me at rogelio.home. That's my personal Instagram. Facebook is Rogelio Goertzen. That's my real last name. And then also Tu Nuevo Home, at Tu Nuevo Home. That's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of that stuff. So that's where we can connect.
Amazing. I cannot thank you enough for being here today. This was, for me personally, I know this was a true joy to record with you, and I needed today. So I cannot imagine how much impact you're going to have on the rest of the people listening. And so I just want to thank you so much. And to anyone listening, if you liked this message today, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, because that's why it exists, so we can share it. We're here to serve others and help others on their crazy journeys called life. So thank you again, my friend, for being here. It really was such a blessing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. God bless. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe. And if there's someone you know that this would help, please share this with them. If you are looking to fix and repair your credit, you can find us at www.micaabigail.com. And if you're looking for more personal stories on myself, you can find me at Fit Credit Doctor. Thanks again for joining, and God bless.